The story begins inside the mind of Yuichi, an ordinary high school boy. He couldn't remember exactly when it all started, but he realized that lately, his gaze would unconsciously be drawn toward a certain girl. In the classroom, Yuichi rested his chin on his hand, staring at the back of his female classmates sitting in front of him. He questioned himself why he paid so much attention to her. She wasn't particularly strange, nor was she a popular hot girl in class, yet her presence lingered in his mind. A gentle breeze blew the white curtains in the quiet room. Yuichi continued his train of thought, concluding that the easiest way to define their relationship was through a familiar title. It was Sumi. She turned around with a calm expression, holding a stack of papers and telling him that the teacher asked her to give them to him. Yuichi explained that they were childhood friends. Yuichi was taken aback when Sumi called his name so formally. He realized she no longer used his intimate nickname. He told himself that a childhood friendship didn't mean anything special. Ever since middle school, they had stopped walking to school together, and their conversations had grown sparse. Sitting in the hallway, Yuichi looked at the papers in his hand with a sense of acceptance, thinking this was just the natural course of things. Time passed, and now they were both in high school. In the classroom, the distance between them seemed to widen, even though they were in the same room. Yuichi buried his face on his desk to sleep, while Sumi sat quietly by the window, reading a book. Yuichi reminisced about the past, remembering the days when they were little and incredibly close. Back then, she always called him by his nickname, but the current image of Sumi with her sad eyes made him realize that it was all in the past, and their relationship had come to a standstill. He thought to himself that they weren't the same as they used to be. After school, Yuichi walked home through the quiet residential area. When he entered the kitchen, his mother was cooking, and his little sister, Chihiro, cheerfully welcomed him home. But that peace was instantly shattered. His mother happily announced some bombshell news. Sumi was coming over to visit today. Behind Yuichi, his little sister Chihiro was ecstatic, repeatedly cheering Sumi's name. Yuichi froze, his mouth agape in shock at the sudden news. His mother wondered why Yuichi was reacting so strongly, since they were childhood sweethearts. She reminded him how Sumi used to visit all the time. Yuichi tried to explain they didn't see each other often anymore, but his mother revealed that Sumi's parents had moved away and she was now living alone. Yuichi was stunned by the flood of information. Sumi was living by herself, and his mom had run into her at the store and caught up. His mother enthusiastically explained that Sumi still remembered and loved her fried chicken, so she didn't hesitate to invite her over for dinner. Chihiro, standing beside them, was just as excited, wholeheartedly supporting her mother's decision. Chihiro was so happy she imagined a cozy dinner scene. A chibi version of her in her thoughts gave a thumbs up. Yuichi looked at his sister's extreme excitement with a pensive expression, realizing that dinner with Sumi was now inevitable. Yuichi slumped onto the table, groaning about why this was happening. While cooking, his mother fondly recalled that the last time Sumi visited was when Chihiro was only 4. After a moment of thought, Yuichi's demeanor suddenly changed. He tied his headband, his eyes filled with determination as if heading into an important battle, and declared it was time for him to show his skills. His mother continued to gush about how beautiful and cute Sumi had become, even though she was already adorable back then. Yuichi stood beside them, sweating bullets, feeling lost amidst the excitement of his mother and sister. Yuichi turned away with a childish pout, but his mother and Chihiro continued their back and forth. His mother insisted Sumi was very cute, and Chihiro, with sparkling eyes full of admiration, asked if it was really true. Yuichi hesitated for a moment, then wondered if Sumi was popular with the boys at school. A chibi image of Chihiro appeared to tease him, but Yuichi flusteredly replied that he wouldn't know something like that. He pondered thoughtfully. In his eyes, Sumi wasn't like the loud, popular girls surrounded by crowds of boys in class. The image of Sumi sitting alone and quiet by the window appeared in his mind, exuding a peaceful and unique beauty. Lost in thought, Yuichi was startled when Chihiro suddenly poked her head out and asked when Sumi would arrive. Yuichi stood in his room, feeling time crawl by. He impatiently wondered why Sumi wasn't here already. Chihiro and his mother calmly replied that she would arrive around 6 p.m., which only fueled his impatience. Looking at his messy room, Yuichi decided he had to clean it up immediately. He planned to vacuum and take out the trash, but paused when he picked up a manga with some sensitive scenes. With a serious face, he decided to hide it deep behind the bookshelf. While cleaning frantically, Yuichi suddenly stopped and slumped to the floor, asking himself what the hell he was doing. He realized Sumi might not even step into his room. But then his eyes fell upon something on the bookshelf. It was an old photo album he had almost forgotten about. His mother loved making these things. Curious, Yuichi picked it up and began flipping through the pages. The memories came flooding back. A photo of a tiny Chihiro next to him. Another from elementary school evoked a strong sense of nostalgia for a time long past. Yuichi saw a blurry photo taken in a hospital with Sumi and Shiratori. He smiled with amusement as he looked at photos from when they were even younger. A wave of nostalgia washed over him as he gazed at the carefree moments of their past. The album page was filled with memories. The two kids wearing birthday hats, building a snowman together in winter, wearing huge backpacks on their first day of elementary school, sleeping soundly side by side, their cheeks puffed out from eating fried chicken and laughing brightly in a field of summer sunflowers. His mother's notes brought to life the inseparable, tight-knit friendship of Yuichi and Sumi. Yuichi lay on his bed, surrounded by books. He realized Sumi was in almost every picture from his childhood. He recalled how she used to come over all the time, and the memory of the fried chicken suddenly became clearer than ever. The image of a hot, crispy plate of fried chicken appeared in his mind, along with the sound of two children calling out to each other back in the day. A vivid memory surfaced of the day his mother brought out the plate of fried chicken, and both little Yuichi and little Sumi cheered with excitement as if they had struck gold. Yuichi remembered devouring the food, his mouth full of the delicious meal. Despite being told to eat slower, he couldn't stop praising it and turned to Sumi for agreement. And Sumi, her eyes sparkling like stars and her cheeks flushed with happiness, was savoring the food with delight. Yuichi smiled as he remembered Sumi's radiant face as she ate, her small mouth chewing away adorably. Returning to the present, Yuichi got up from his bed. He remembered now. Sumi really did love his mother's fried chicken. He continued to reminisce about the days they played from morning till night. The sleepovers where they were too excited to sleep and got scolded by the adults, or the times they played games and caught bugs in the garden. He chuckled remembering their silly old bedtime signal, where they would jump around in their pajamas shouting slogans like little superheroes. Yuichi wondered what they were thinking back then. Back then, the two children held hands wherever they went. Yuichi realized they had spent more time together than with anyone else in the world. The sound of Sumi's old call, "You!" echoed in his head. Lying on his bed, Yuichi covered his eyes, feeling nostalgia seep into every corner of his soul. At this moment, his thoughts were racing, and he couldn't understand why he was always thinking about her in his own home. He blushed, covering his mouth in thought. For some reason, these memories gave him a strange feeling, different from his normal everyday life. An image of the two children holding hands appeared with the thought. No matter how much time passed, in their parents' eyes, they would always be the same innocent kids. Back in the present-day classroom, everything was normal. Groups of friends chatted together, but Sumi still sat alone reading a book, separate from the world around her. The image of Sumi calling his name, Yuichi, with a pensive look appeared, like a fragile connection between the past and present. Yuichi sat on his bed, comparing the cheerful Sumi of the past with the quiet Sumi of today. He admitted she had changed a lot, though she was still a quiet person by nature. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, interrupting his thoughts. Sumi had arrived. Yuichi's mother happily greeted her at the door. Sumi shyly said hello and offered a small gift of snacks. His mother and Chihiro excitedly led her inside, while Yuichi only dared to watch from a distance. She looked down at her hands, her thoughts unclear. Standing next to each other, Sumi confessed she was a little nervous since it had been so long. Yuichi awkwardly reminded her that she used to come over all the time, but they both understood that the passage of time had created this awkwardness. Suddenly, Sumi turned to look directly into Yuichi's eyes and asked if she could call him like she used to. Yuichi froze, completely caught off guard by the request. Sumi explained that she was afraid his mother would find it strange if she suddenly changed how she addressed him. The reason seemed logical, but it also held a desire to reconnect. Yuichi remembered that Sumi always called his mother Yu's mom. He scratched his head, realizing the logic in her explanation. Leading the way, Yuichi said he didn't mind and agreed. Sumi smiled in relief and thanked him. Yuichi turned his back, trying to act casual, but his heart was surely fluttering. Yuichi turned back to look at Sumi and declared, "Well then, I'll do the same," implying he would also revert to their old, familiar way of addressing each other. He told himself it had been 10 years. He had to make sure to talk to her as naturally as they used to. They both looked down at their feet, agreeing to bridge this gap. From the kitchen, their mother called out, urging Sumi to hurry. Yuichi answered for her. Chihiro glared at her brother, teasingly saying she wasn't asking him, which made Yuichi blush. Yuichi wondered if they could really talk like they used to. Sumi's silence behind him made him uncertain. As they entered the dining room, all three youngsters were stunned. On the table was a lavish feast, with a huge, glistening platter of fried chicken as the centerpiece. Chihiro's and Sumi's eyes lit up with delight. Yuichi, horrified, asked if there was too much food, even as his mouth began to water. His mother teased that his face was saying the opposite. Chihiro excitedly invited everyone to sit down. Yuichi asked where their dad was, and his mother explained he had to work late, so they should eat first. The feast began. The group put their hands together to thank the cook and cheerfully exclaimed, "Let's eat!" The air was filled with joy. Chihiro and Yuichi ate voraciously, their mouths full of endless praise. Sumi watched the siblings with a gentle smile, commenting on their happy faces. Yuichi looked up, his cheeks still puffed with food, and stared at Sumi in surprise. And then he saw Sumi enjoying the food. Her eyes were wide and sparkling. Her cheeks flushed from the delicious taste, and her hand lightly covered her mouth. In that moment, she looked truly happy. Chihiro excitedly urged Sumi to eat more, saying how cute she was. Sumi covered her mouth and laughed shyly. Yuichi glanced from his rice bowl to Sumi. She was eating with gusto. Chihiro wondered about something, while Yuichi chuckled looking at the mountain of fried chicken, realizing his mom hadn't changed at all, always cooking way too much. Yuichi remembered that the Sumi of the past had the exact same expression when she ate. He and his mother chuckled, leaving Sumi confused. Yuichi continued to eat like a storm, making Sumi's eyes widen in surprise. She looked at him with a serious gaze mixed with a hint of gentle disappointment, uttering, "Honestly, you." But then, she closed her eyes and smiled, soaking in the warm atmosphere. She said it felt like they had truly returned to the old days, and that made her very happy. Yuichi looked at her, silently admitting she was right. The meal ended with a pile of clean plates. In the kitchen, everyone was full and satisfied. A sudden glance at the clock made them realize it was late. Sumi flusteredly said it was time for her to go home. Yuichi was about to say something when he saw a comical scene at the door. Chihiro was clinging tightly to Sumi, refusing to let her leave, shouting in protest. Yuichi had to intervene to pry his clingy little sister off. Yuichi's mother smiled kindly, telling Sumi to drop by for a meal anytime. Sumi admired Yuichi's mother's cooking skills and wished she could cook like that. Chihiro immediately offered to teach Sumi, which moved her deeply. The family waved goodbye to Sumi at the door. Chihiro made Sumi promise to come back soon. Sumi smiled brightly, promising she definitely would. Chihiro yelled, "Come over all the time," making Sumi blush beet red, surprised by the overwhelming enthusiasm. Yuichi was about to scold Chihiro for her thoughtless words, but burst out laughing when he saw the scene of the group huddled together at the door, with no personal space left. Sumi smiled gently, agreeing that she would visit often. Her smile was so sincere it warmed everyone's hearts. Yuichi's mother affirmed she was always welcome. Chihiro was so delighted she practically sparkled. Yuichi stood by, watching the scene with a peaceful expression. His mother reminded Yuichi that it was dark and he should walk Sumi home. Chihiro said goodbye to her siblings and reminded Yuichi to keep his promise. The two walked under the streetlights. Yuichi apologized for Chihiro's hyperactive behavior. Sumi, however, thought it was cute and said she liked the lively atmosphere. Sumi hesitated, wanting to say something more. Yuichi turned to listen. She began shyly, "It's just that." Then she broke into the brightest smile of the evening. Her cheeks flushed, and confessed that being able to talk to you again after all this time made her incredibly happy. Before they could savor the romantic moment, they had arrived. Yuichi was stunned to realize her house was so close, less than a 5-minute walk. He froze, feeling a mix of anticlimax and amusement. Sumi wished him good night and said she'd see him at school. Yuichi raised his hand in a wave and turned to leave decisively. But then he bowed his head, his steps slowing. Yuichi squatted down on the road, holding his head in thought. He told himself they had eaten dinner at his house before, and the way they talked tonight was exactly the same as in the old days. Nothing new. But then he blushed, covering his mouth in confusion. He realized that even though everything seemed exactly like the past, the feeling in his heart was completely different. It was unfamiliar, thrilling, and made it impossible for him to stay calm. Yuichi understood that something had begun to change. Lying in bed, Yuichi stared intently at his phone, his finger resting thoughtfully on his lips. He was trying to understand the true meaning of the nostalgia he was feeling. Meanwhile, an image of Sumi appeared in his mind, smiling happily. Her cheeks flushed as if she were sharing the same emotion. The clock on his phone showed 10:34 p.m. Before falling asleep, curiosity prompted Yuichi to look up the word nostalgia in a dictionary. He wondered why his feelings about his childhood friend bothered him so much, especially after the lunchbox incident that would happen the next day. The next morning, the alarm clock blared at 7:50 a.m. The continuous beeps rang out like a cruel reminder that his time to sleep in was over. Yuichi opened his eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling, dark circles visible under his eyes. He was still exhausted from Sumi's visit after such a long time. Sleepiness still clung to him stubbornly. Stumbling into the kitchen looking half asleep, Yuichi was greeted by the bright smiles of his mother and younger sibling. Their morning energy was a stark contrast to his current sluggishness. Sitting at the dining table, Yuichi mindlessly chewed on a piece of toast. His older sister immediately noticed his fatigue and asked if he had stayed up late. Yuichi just mumbled a non-committal answer. As he grabbed his bag to leave, despite everyone wishing him a good day, his sister watched him with concern and decided to walk with him for a bit, as he looked like he was about to collapse. But disaster struck right after. Back at home, his little sister Chihiro held up a lunchbox in horror, realizing her absent-minded brother had forgotten his important lunch. She let out a long sigh and then screamed for their mom. At school, the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by Yuichi's breakdown. He slumped over his desk, lightning bolts seeming to strike around him as he realized he had forgotten his lunch. A sense of despair washed over the hungry student. Yuichi started rummaging through his bag, hoping to find some spare change. He cursed himself for coming to school in a half-awake state. Instead of his lunch, he had mistakenly brought his gym clothes, even though there was no PE class today. He sighed, wondering if he had any money for the cafeteria. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. It would be nice if someone made me lunch, but harsh reality immediately crushed that hope. All he had were 2 small coins, totaling 11 yen. The clinking of the coins in his hand sounded like a death knell for his protesting stomach. He glanced over at a couple in class. The boy was happily receiving a bento box made with love from his girlfriend. Yuichi buried his face in his desk, filled with envy and despair. He wondered if romantic things like that actually existed in real life, and what he was supposed to do now with his empty stomach. Surprisingly, a hand reached out in front of him, placing a neatly wrapped lunchbox on his stack of books. Yuichi looked up, his eyes widening in astonishment. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw this saving grace appear. The person standing before him was none other than Sumi. She calmly said good morning as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Yuichi uttered her name in utter disbelief, not understanding why she was here or why she had a lunch for him. Sumi stood there, giving a slight bow in return, her expression as calm as ever. Her appearance left Yuichi frozen, unsure how to react. Yuichi stammered, asking why she had his lunch. Sumi simply explained that she was asked to bring it to him on her way to school. It turned out she had run into one of Yuichi's family members and was given the task. But what shocked Yuichi even more was Sumi's next sentence. With an innocent expression, she suggested they exchange contact information. Yuichi was completely flustered by this sudden and proactive move. It dawned on him that having a childhood friend deliver his lunch was a plausible scenario, but asking for his number was completely unexpected. Sumi explained that she thought exchanging contacts would be more convenient. Yuichi, holding his phone, was sweating profusely, feeling everything was happening too fast. He wondered why she chose this particular moment. With a gentle and slightly shy smile, Sumi reminded him of her promise to visit his house again. Her eyes sparkled with a sincerity that made Yuichi's heart skip a beat. Yuichi's face turned beet red. He looked up at her, speechless. This barrage of forwardness left him completely defenseless. Back at his desk, Yuichi secretly stuffed the lunchbox into his bag, glancing around to see if anyone had overheard their conversation. When Sumi curiously asked what was wrong, he flatly denied everything. But inwardly, Yuichi was screaming in embarrassment, remembering that he also had to attend a cooking class soon, a secret he wasn't ready to share. Sumi announced she was heading back to her seat and walked away, leaving a powerful aftershock. Yuichi collapsed onto his desk, holding his head in confusion. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but his heart was pounding relentlessly. He couldn't understand how she could exchange contacts so casually while he was a complete mess. Time in class seemed to grind to a halt. Yuichi buried his face in his arms, reassuring himself he hadn't done anything wrong. But the nervous feeling wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, Sumi sat at the desk in front, casually thinking that no one would care if they talked to each other. Sumi sat quietly in her seat, her gaze distant and thoughtful. She held a book, but her mind seemed to be elsewhere. Yuichi sat with his back to her, also lost in thought. He glanced at Sumi, who seemed to be wondering about something. He clutched the lunchbox, his face flushed, and muttered the phrase childhood friend, as if to remind himself of the limits of their relationship. Unable to bear the awkwardness any longer, Yuichi shot up from his seat, muttering a curse, and decided to put his bag in his locker to escape everyone's gaze and calm himself down. Holding his phone, Yuichi wondered if he was the only one who found this strange, while Sumi acted completely normal. He realized he couldn't even bring himself to say her name. After some hesitation, he decided to text her a thank you for the lunch, but his finger hovered over the keyboard. Suddenly, Sumi's phone buzzed with a notification. She opened it and immediately typed a reply at lightning speed. On the other end, Yuichi was startled to receive an instant response, exclaiming, "That was fast." On the screen, Yuichi's message was brief. "Thanks for the lunch." Sumi replied, "You're welcome. Do you still like kinpira gobu?" Yuichi stood in the middle of the classroom, scratching his head in confusion. He wondered why she would bring up kinpira gobu, braised burdock root, now. Still, he decided to reply. Sumi's next message explained why. Because it was always in your lunchbox when we were kids. A simple text, yet it held a universe of memories. Yuichi smiled at his phone, telling Sumi, though she wasn't there, that it was so long ago. How could she still remember? But it seemed Sumi cherished every tiny detail of their past. Yuichi opened the lunchbox. Just as Sumi had said, there was a portion of kinpira gobu neatly placed beside the rice balls. He realized that, yes, his lunchbox had always included this dish. An image from the past returned. Two small children sitting together, a shy little Sumi giving a gift, while a little Yuichi devoured a chicken leg, grinning from ear to ear and declaring, "I love it!" Back in the present, Yuichi smirked, thinking to himself that Sumi still remembered such small things. He thought she had changed, but it turned out she was still the same girl. Elsewhere, Sumi looked at her phone with a hint of disappointment, perhaps because Yuichi's reaction wasn't what she had hoped for. But then she let out a small giggle, covering her mouth. She realized Yuichi hadn't changed at all either. He was still the same dense boy from back then. After school, it began to rain. The drenched scenery evoked a sense of melancholy. Yuichi walked down the hallway, thinking about their relationship. Distant yet closer, nostalgic yet awkward. Yuichi ran for cover under a gazebo in the park. He had intended to run straight home, but the rain was too heavy, so he decided to wait. He realized he was already partially soaked. Suddenly, Sumi rushed into the shelter, completely drenched. Yuichi jumped in shock at the sight of his friend's sorry state. Sumi stood there, dripping wet. Yuichi asked why she was so soaked. She sheepishly explained that she had tried to outrun the storm, but she was too slow to escape. The two sat down on a bench. The rain continued to pour outside. Sumi asked in surprise why Yuichi was waiting for the rain to stop instead of running home, since he was never that patient in the old days. Yuichi turned away, boldly declaring that he was a high school student now. Who cares about a little childish rain? Sumi smiled, reminding him that he used to run and play outside regardless of the weather. Yuichi turned back to look at Sumi, smiling as he reminded her. "But you know, you used to play in the rain with me too, Sumi." Sumi nodded in agreement, saying she always wondered how he never got sick. Suddenly, Sumi bent over, clutching her school bag to her chest, her face turning beet red. Yuichi looked at her, and then his own face flushed, his eyes wide with shock. The rain showed no signs of stopping. Yuichi awkwardly said her name, trying to break the tense silence. Sumi looked up at the sky, confirming that the downpour wasn't letting up. Yuichi sneaked a glance at Sumi, who had her back to him, watching the rain. His face was as red as a tomato. He was screaming internally at a shocking realization. For the first time in his life, he had accidentally seen a girl's that. He frantically recalled the brief image. It was white. He was sure it was white. This fact made his brain short-circuit. Yuichi stood there stunned, wondering since when he started noticing these things. Sumi sat quietly beside him, completely unaware of the storm raging inside her friend's mind. Yuichi bowed his head, fighting an internal battle. He had always seen Sumi as a little sister, as family, not as some random girl to have perverted thoughts about. But if she was just family, why was his heart pounding like this after seeing that? He couldn't explain his body's reaction. Yuichi held his head in agony under the shelter. A voice asked if he was okay. He could only mumble a reply, trying to hide his inner turmoil. The more he thought about it, the guiltier Yuichi felt. Beside him, Sumi maintained her innocent expression, which only intensified his guilt. Sumi sat on the bench, lost in thought. Suddenly, she looked down at her shirt and gasped, "Oh!" She realized her wet white blouse had become transparent, revealing what was underneath. Sumi immediately hugged her school bag to her chest to cover up, her face flushing with embarrassment. She kept her head down, not daring to look at Yuichi. Yuichi turned to her worriedly and asked if she was okay. But his question was met with a series of sneezes from Sumi. She was starting to catch a chill. Sumi shivered uncontrollably, her whole body shaking. She insisted, "I'm fine, totally fine." But her condition betrayed her words. It was clear she was not fine at all. Seeing Sumi tremble, Yuichi suddenly remembered something. He felt a bit cold himself but tried to act tough. Sumi looked at him with a worried expression. Without hesitation, Yuichi took off his sports jacket and offered it to Sumi. He told her she could wear it if she wanted. Sumi asked in surprise why he had his gym clothes, since there was no PE class today. Yuichi scratched his head and explained that he had grabbed the wrong bag in his sleepy state this morning. The morning's unfortunate mix-up had now become a saving grace. Sumi recalled how Yuichi used to get sick after playing in the rain as a kid, so she told him he should be the one to wear it. Yuichi firmly refused, giving the jacket to her. Memories flooded back. Yuichi remembered how bored he used to be on days when he couldn't play with Sumi. Sumi smiled, remarking that he had a good memory. Even she had forgotten that detail. Yuichi looked down, shyly admitting that when Sumi wasn't around, it was just so boring. His mumbled confession made the air heavy with silence. Yuichi's face turned beet red as he wondered why saying such an obvious truth felt so embarrassing. He was struggling intensely with his own shyness. Hearing that, Sumi buried her face in her school bag, hiding her cheeks that were flushing with emotion. To break the awkward atmosphere, Yuichi turned and laughed loudly, patting his chest and boasting that he was strong and a little rain couldn't make him sick. Sumi looked up, her eyes soft with gratitude. She quietly said thank you, accepting his kindness. Sumi took the jacket and asked Yuichi to keep watch while she changed. Yuichi nodded eagerly, turning his back to stand guard, his face still red. After changing, Sumi stood there in Yuichi's jacket. It was oversized for her small frame. Yuichi turned back, commenting that it looked huge on her. Yuichi looked at the small girl swallowed by his jacket and suddenly realized she had grown up so much without him even noticing. Sumi took a few playful steps and turned to look at Yuichi. He blushed, stammering in agreement with his own thoughts. The two stood facing each other. Sumi tilted her head, confused, while Yuichi stared at her, seemingly wanting to compare something. Yuichi stepped closer, standing right in front of Sumi. She closed her eyes in anticipation, asking what he was doing. It turned out they were comparing their height. Sumi gave a sad smile, saying that now, even on her tiptoes, she couldn't reach his height anymore. She reminded him that she used to be taller than him in elementary school. Yuichi turned away, blushing at the memory of when he was a short little kid. Sumi mused, "It's like we were close, then distant, and now we're close again." The rain had stopped. She suggested they head home. Yuichi looked up in surprise at the clear sky and nodded. On the way home, sunlight filtered through the leaves. Yuichi thought about the contradictions of time. Sometimes nothing changed, but other times it felt like everything was different. Sumi confessed that on the days without him, she also felt very bored. Yuichi felt like his world was spinning. The emotions, the memories, and this ambiguous relationship left him confused. Sumi just listened quietly. The next morning in class, the teacher announced that Sumi was absent due to a cold. Yuichi sat with his chin in his hand, not surprised at all. He thought to himself, just as I expected, some things never change. Remembering how she always got sick after being in the rain. At Yuichi's house, the news of Sumi's absence spread. His sister was utterly horrified. Her hand covering her mouth in shock upon hearing Sumi was sick in bed. Yuichi stood there, explaining with a slightly flustered look that the teacher had asked him to bring school materials to Sumi since their houses were close. He planned to just drop by, put the materials in her mailbox, and leave immediately. His sister looked at him with deep concern, repeatedly asking if Sumi was okay. But just as Yuichi slung his bag over his shoulder to leave, a voice called out for him to wait. Yuichi was bewildered as a banknote was pressed into his hand. It was a 1,000 yen bill. His family member started rattling off a long list of instructions. Buy cold medicine, buy snacks Sumi likes, energy jellies, sports drinks. Yuichi was overwhelmed and had to interrupt to confirm if she really just had a common cold, wondering why the preparations were as elaborate as for a medical emergency. Yuichi worriedly mumbled about Sumi living alone, wondering what would happen if something serious occurred. His family member reassured him he was overreacting, that it was just a cold. Yuichi sighed in resignation, telling himself, right, it's just a cold, and left with a look of reluctant acceptance, though his heart was still uneasy. While he was lost in thought, she pushed him out the door. At the convenience store, Yuichi stood hesitantly in front of the shelves. His basket already had jelly and drinks, but he was stuck on snacks Sumi likes. He realized he had no idea what her current tastes were, so he opted for the safest choices. While waiting in line to pay, Yuichi suddenly froze. A thought struck him as he looked out the glass door toward the old apartment complex. Standing in the apartment building's hallway, Yuichi nervously double-checked the room number, 302, to make sure he had the right address. Initially, he had just planned to drop the materials in her mailbox like an indifferent delivery person. He hadn't thought much of it until now. Yuichi paced back and forth in the hallway, his mind racing. True, Sumi was his childhood friend, but she was also a girl, and he was about to enter the private home of a girl living alone. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Trying to calm himself down by thinking he would just drop off the stuff and leave, Yuichi pressed the doorbell with a trembling hand. But in his heart, he wondered why he was so nervous about visiting his childhood best friend's house. There was no answer. The prolonged silence made Yuichi anxious. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a message from Sumi. "I'm coming." But he still had to wait in the hallway for quite a while, worrying that she might have fainted inside from her fever. Finally, the door creaked open. Sumi appeared looking haggard, her face flushed with fever, leaning unsteadily against the doorframe. She whispered that she was feeling better than this morning, but to Yuichi, she looked terribly ill. Yuichi awkwardly handed her the school materials. Sumi took them and offered a weak thank you. But immediately after, Sumi swayed as if she were about to fall. A wave of dizziness hit her, and she couldn't stand firm, staggering like a drunk person. She panted, admitting that just walking to the door had drained the last of her strength. Then she collapsed onto the floor. Yuichi cried out in alarm, "You're not okay at all." Sumi confessed she could barely walk on her own. Without hesitation, Yuichi decided to help her to her bed, realizing her condition was much worse than he had thought. She mumbled that she just needed a little rest and she'd be fine. With a flushed face and a rare, coaxing tone, Sumi quietly asked him to give her a piggyback ride. Yuichi froze, asking if she was serious. He was utterly flustered, first calling him "you," and now asking for a piggyback ride. He thought she was joking, but Sumi's gaze seemed to challenge him. "You're not going to do it?" Sumi giggled with an unusual, innocent look. Yuichi wondered why she was acting so friendly and strange today. But looking closer, he saw she was curled up, her face flushed with fever, and she seemed to be in great discomfort. Yuichi sighed, realizing she was genuinely in pain and not joking around. Sumi weakly hid behind him, as if trying to escape her fatigue. Yuichi let out a helpless sigh. Good grief. He crouched down, turning his back to her and telling her to climb on. "Come on. You can't walk, right?" Sumi hesitated, asking if he was sure, her cheeks turning an even deeper shade of red from embarrassment. Yuichi retorted with a look of resignation. "What else are you going to do?" As there was clearly no other way to move her. Hearing that, Sumi childishly cheered, "Hooray!" her body swaying with joy or dizziness. She wrapped her arms around his neck from behind. The sudden contact made Yuichi stiffen, letting out a flustered, feeling her soft body press against his back. Yuichi braced himself and lifted her up, and just like that, he was carrying her on his back. Both of them were blushing furiously. The sudden intimate moment, complete with explosive visual effects around them, sent both their hearts racing. Yuichi stammered in his thoughts. "What is this?" His eyes wide with shock. Sumi rested her head on his shoulder, sensing Yuichi was standing still as a statue. She wondered why he wasn't moving. Suddenly, they both jolted, realizing their extreme proximity. They called out each other's name in unison, "You!" in utter confusion. There was zero distance between them. Sumi's breath tickled Yuichi's neck. She whispered, asking if she was heavy, while Yuichi was being overloaded by a torrent of emotions, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to stay calm and replied that she wasn't heavy, but Sumi was too exhausted. She went limp and relaxed completely on his back, mumbling, "Oh, good." After placing Sumi on the bed, Yuichi sat down on the floor and opened the sports drink he had bought. Sumi was surprised at how well prepared he was. He handed it to her to drink. Sumi apologized for her messy pajamas. Yuichi waved it off, saying it was fine. He took out the medicine and energy jelly, explaining that his mom had told him to bring them and to pass on Sumi's thanks. Yuichi tried to joke to ease the tension, teasing about his own worries. Sumi smiled weakly, saying that because it was him, she didn't mind being unguarded. Standing by the bed, Yuichi looked worriedly at the resting girl, wondering if she was feeling any better. Sitting restlessly on the floor, it finally dawned on Yuichi. He was in a girl's bedroom. He had only intended to stop by for a second, and now he was sitting right there. The room, with its cute decorations, made him feel even more out of place and incredibly awkward. He thought he should leave so she could rest. Staying longer would only be a bother and was making him unbearably tense. Yuichi stood up to say goodbye, wishing her a speedy recovery. But just as he turned to leave, a weak hand reached out and grabbed the hem of his shirt. "Wait!" Sumi looked at him with teary eyes, her cheeks flushed from fever and emotion. She pleaded, "Don't go." Yuichi froze. A memory from the past flooded back. He remembered now. Whenever she was sick as a child, Sumi would cry her eyes out and beg him not to leave her alone. She would become extremely clingy, a complete contrast to her usual calm demeanor. The present-day Sumi was looking at him with the exact same pleading eyes as back then, saying, "Please." Yuichi realized that when she was sick, she would say things she would never dare to say normally. Words like, "Don't go." Yuichi blushed, bowing his head in confusion, wondering why he was reacting so strongly to her request. Watching Sumi clutch his shirt without letting go, they both looked down, blushing. Yuichi panicked internally. "Why is my heart beating so fast?" Sumi sobbed, tears streaming down her feverish face. She whimpered, "Don't go, Yuichi looked at her, thinking how painfully familiar this scene was. He knew this would happen. It was exactly like their childhood days when she would cling to him every time she got sick. Yuichi was utterly flustered. Even though he was mentally prepared and thought he was used to this, hearing her say the exact same words as before still felt strange and made his heart race. They stood close together, faces flushed. Sumi looked up at him, wondering why her own heart was pounding so hard. Sumi sniffled, pouring out her grievances through tears. She felt incredibly lonely because even when she was sick, she had to handle everything herself, from food and medicine to doctor's visits, with no one by her side. Her sheep-patterned pajamas only made her look smaller and more pitiful. Yuichi stood frozen, sweating bullets. He realized this wasn't the usual calm Sumi. He remembered she was living alone, and perhaps the fever had made her this vulnerable and act so differently. He wondered if the fever was the only reason. Yuichi recalled his family's words before he left. "It's just a cold, but she's living alone." He sighed, telling himself he had no other choice. Yuichi turned to Sumi and said firmly, "I'll stay." Sumi looked at him, both surprised and relieved. Upon hearing that, Sumi's face lit up. Her eyes widened, sparkling with pure joy and admiration, as if she had just heard the best news in the world. But immediately after, Sumi face-planted right into the soft pillow on her bed with a thump to hide her overwhelming happiness. Yuichi stared blankly at his friend's bizarre action. "What on earth are you doing?" From amidst the pillows, Sumi smiled gently, her eyes closed in contentment. She quietly confessed that she was very happy to have him there. Yuichi's heart pounded thump-thump at this direct and sweet attack. He blushed, feeling the vibration in his chest. Sumi lay in bed, looking at him with a dreamy yet mischievous gaze, asking if he would stay until she fell asleep. Yuichi, sitting on the floor, replied that it probably wouldn't take that long. But in his head, he was panicking. "If I fall asleep here too, who's going to lock the door?" As if reading his mind, Sumi pointed to the door, saying there was a spare key there, so he didn't have to worry. Yuichi sighed, telling her not to move around too much. But Sumi kept rolling back and forth on the bed in delight, murmuring how glad she was that he was here. Finally, She sat up to drink some water, insisting she was fine. But no sooner had she said the words, her body swayed and wobbled like a roly-poly doll. It was clear she was not fine at all. Yuichi had to order her to lie down and rest, as if soothing a troublesome child. Watching Sumi sleep soundly with a smile on her face, he thought to himself that she hadn't changed a bit. She always got whiny like this when she was sick. Involuntarily, an old memory surfaced, and his heart skipped a beat again for reasons he couldn't explain. Yuichi watched Sumi's innocent sleeping face, so different from her serious expression at school. Suddenly, her stomach growled. Sumi woke up, complaining she was hungry. Yuichi asked if she wanted jelly or cake, and her eyes instantly lit up like headlights at the word, cake. Yuichi handed her a slice of strawberry shortcake, confidently saying he bought it because he knew it was her favorite. Sumi held the fork, looking at him blankly and asking, "Really?" Yuichi began to panic. "Huh? It's not." Yuichi broke into a cold sweat, thinking he had made a huge mistake. Sumi quickly clarified that she did like cake, but was curious why he was so certain it was her absolute favorite. Yuichi scratched his head and explained, "Well, when we were kids, I always saw you staring at that picture book, The Big Bakery, so I just assumed." Sumi smiled happily, her cheeks flushing with emotion, touched that he still remembered such small details. She looked at the cake in her hand and said hesitantly, "Of course I like cake, but—" She recalled the image of her younger self engrossed in the book and confessed, "Actually, what I really wanted was to be the one making the cakes." Yuichi froze and asked, "What do you mean, wanted?" He was completely lost. Sumi smiled mysteriously and said it was a secret, then happily picked up her fork to eat, leaving Yuichi standing there with a bewildered expression. Suddenly, Sumi used her fork to pick up the strawberry, the best part of the cake, and held it out to Yuichi. He stared in shock, as everyone knows the strawberry is the soul of a strawberry shortcake. Sumi beamed, "I'm giving it to you because it's the best part." The girl looked at him with sincere eyes, saying it was her way of thanking him for today. She was truly relieved and happy that he had come. Yuichi hesitantly took the strawberry but was still flustered. Seeing him eat it, Sumi smiled in satisfaction. "Good." But then, Yuichi jolted in shock as he felt an unexpected touch. "Wait, is this?" Turned out Sumi was about to feed him the next bite of cake. Yuichi's face turned beet red as he frantically waved his hands. "You're not going to make me open my mouth and say, 'Ah,' are you? I can eat it myself." But Sumi, with a pout and iron-willed determination, said firmly, "No." She refused to back down, her resolute gaze leaving Yuichi to helplessly call her a spoiled brat. Yuichi sighed in resignation, telling himself he was just indulging a stubborn child. If he didn't go along with it, they'd probably be arguing about it until morning. He reluctantly opened his mouth and ate the piece of cake from her hand. Sumi smiled brightly and asked if it was good. Yuichi turned his face away, muttering, "Can't be helped, just this once." But then he quietly admitted, "Yeah, it's good." His face was flushed with embarrassment over the childish act. Yuichi sat there, silently regretting buying the cake that led to this awkward situation. Sumi sneaked a peek at him, then cheerfully said, "I'm going to eat too." They both ate in an atmosphere that was both awkward and sweet. Watching Sumi's happy expression as she enjoyed the cake, Yuichi observed her carefully and thought, "Ah, whatever. As long as she was happy, it was fine." As soon as she finished eating, Sumi fell asleep instantly like a child. Yuichi looked at the girl sleeping soundly on the bed, remarking to himself how childish she was before wishing her a good night. Yuichi stood up to leave, but then paused. He held the spare key in his hand, wondering what to do with it. Looking back at Sumi, who was dead asleep, he was amazed at how fast she had drifted off. The next morning at school, Yuichi was in a full-blown panic, sweating profusely when he discovered he had accidentally taken Sumi's house key home with him. He sat in class, pale as a ghost, trying to reassure himself that returning it at school today would be fine, right? As he was stressing out over how to face Sumi after yesterday's incident, wondering if she would even come to school, a voice called out, "Yuichi." Sumi walked into the classroom, saying good morning, with a slightly surprised look at his disheveled state. Yuichi and the other students were surprised by her calm appearance. Yuichi stammered a greeting back. Sumi calmly thanked him for yesterday and asked him to pass her thanks to his mother. Yuichi asked about her health, and she confirmed she was fine. Everything was suspiciously normal. Sitting alone in the classroom, Yuichi couldn't believe the night and day difference. The image of the crying, clinging Sumi from yesterday and the cool, serious Sumi of today kept alternating in his head. The contrast was insane. He couldn't figure her out anymore. But then, a memory flashed through his mind. The feeling of a hand gently stroking his hair, a peaceful face in sleep. In another corner, Sumi had her face buried in a book, her cheeks as red as a beet. She was desperately trying to reassure herself, "I acted normal, right?" It turned out she was also dying of embarrassment over what happened yesterday. As for Yuichi, after getting lost in his thoughts, he suddenly jolted. He stared at the object in his hand and screamed in his mind with a horrified expression, "Oh no! I still haven't given her key back. What do I do now?" After school, Yuichi was walking home with his friends. Suddenly, he remembered he still hadn't returned the key to Sumi. But right after, an idea lit up in his head like a light bulb. "Why didn't I think of this sooner? I can just put it in her mailbox." Yuichi smiled triumphantly, relieved to have found a solution to this tricky problem without having to face Sumi directly at school. Yuichi tiptoed down the apartment hallway towards apartment 302. His heart was pounding, even though it was just a simple act of returning a key. He bent down in front of the door, about to slip the key into the mail slot, when a voice suddenly said from behind, "Huh!" Yuichi jumped, spun around, and saw Sumi standing there, looking at him with surprise. Yuichi and Sumi sat facing each other. Sumi rested her chin on her hand, nodding as if she understood. "Well, I see why your heart was pounding now." Yuichi broke into a cold sweat, confused about what she was implying and wondering if she had actually heard his heartbeat. While sitting peacefully, Yuichi suddenly shot up and tried to flee the awkward situation. But Sumi was faster, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. She flashed a mischievous smile, teasing her flustered friend, leaving Yuichi to just stand there and take it. Suddenly, something hard hit Yuichi in the head, dazing him. A threatening voice rang out, "You're not getting away." He fell backward, not understanding what was happening. It turned out the attacker was Erika Shiratori, Yuichi's classmate. She appeared with a radiant smile and the key Yuichi was just about to return in her hand. Yuichi clutched his aching head, silently groaning about why he had to run into the most annoying person at a time like this. He angrily asked how she got the key. Erika didn't answer right away but put a finger to her lips mysteriously, telling Yuichi to tell her everything. Then, she abruptly changed the subject, saying she was craving a parfait, which left Yuichi completely baffled. Erika leaned close to Yuichi's ear and whispered suggestively, "I wonder what would happen if I told the whole class what I just saw?" Yuichi's face went pale as he understood her threat. Defeated, he had no choice but to accept her demand. He screamed internally, "Why a parfait of all things?" And so, a gigantic, magnificent strawberry parfait appeared before them, sparkling like a work of art. At the cafe, Erika was ecstatic over the supersized parfait, while Yuichi sat opposite her, looking painfully at his wallet. Erika urged him to spill the beans, and Yuichi began the story of his relationship with Sumi. Erika ate and giggled, promising to keep the secret of cha-cha-cha-cha, the name of their childhood friend group. She seemed very amused by this information. Watching Erika eat with relish, Yuichi fell into thought. He mumbled, "It's been a long time since I've heard that name." Memories of their old friend group flooded his mind. He remembered the days when they were a group of 4, getting into all sorts of mischief together. Erika suggested calling Zu, the last member of the group, for a reunion, but Yuichi dismissed the idea, saying things couldn't just happen that naturally. An image of the four children standing with their backs turned, arms raised in solidarity, appeared. Cha-cha-cha-cha was the name they had given their close-knit group of four back in elementary school. Yuichi remembered the group photo in the album. The four members, Erika, Sumi, Yuichi me, and Zu, each with a different personality, but they were once inseparable. Yuichi sat pensively with his drink. Despite how close they once were, time and growing up had created distance. The name Cha-cha-cha-cha now sounded both familiar and foreign. He looked at Erika. The once serious, glasses-wearing class president had transformed into a stylish girl happily enjoying her dessert. The change made him feel how quickly time had passed. Erika pressed him for details about the key. Yuichi stammered, explaining he was just bringing school materials to Sumi. Erika suddenly remembered she was also asked to do that and realized the coincidence. Yuichi continued the story of how Sumi collapsed at the door, how he had to help her to bed, and then accidentally took the key home to lock the door for her. Erika listened and nodded, her expression full of meaning. After hearing the story, Erika was thoroughly disappointed, crying out, "That's ITT. So boring." She had expected something more dramatic or romantic. Yuichi wondered what kind of scenario she had imagined. Erika smiled mischievously and made a heart shape with her hands. "I thought you two were already a couple." Yuichi's jaw dropped, utterly shocked by her assumption. "What?" Erika sighed, saying Yuichi's actions were just like Sumi's. Yuichi blushed furiously, not understanding the comparison. He changed the subject, complaining that Sumi was too careless, falling asleep with a boy in her room. Erika smiled and commented, "She must really trust you." Yuichi looked down and mumbled that Sumi probably didn't think that far ahead. He continued, observing that Sumi was still as spacey as she was when they were kids. Erika asked curiously, "In what way?" Yuichi hesitated, trying to find the right words to describe it. Erika rested her chin on her hand, listening intently. Yuichi blushed, recalling Sumi's smile, and confessed, "Her smile, for one, and other things too." Erika's eyes widened in amazement. Really? She never expected Yuichi to pay such close attention to Sumi. She became incredibly excited, shouting that Yuichi had to give her constant updates. Yuichi was flustered by her over-the-top enthusiasm. Leaving the cafe, Erika seemed very satisfied. She suddenly confessed that she used to think Yuichi hated her. Yuichi was surprised and denied it, saying he never did. Erika pouted, asking why he stopped calling her by her nickname then. Yuichi scratched his head, blaming it on time changing things. Yuichi thought about how it was normal to keep some distance from friends of the opposite sex as you grow up. But Erika turned back and set a condition. If he didn't hate her, he shouldn't call her Erika anymore. Yuichi was confused, not knowing what to call her. Erika teased, "Of course, it's Lady Erika." Yuichi grimaced, "Ugh." Then she smiled brightly and told him to just call her Eri, like he used to. Erika cheered awesome when Yuichi agreed. He sighed, "Roger that," accepting their old way of addressing each other. Erika excitedly suggested getting the Cha-cha-cha-cha group back together and inviting Zu. Yuichi wondered what it would be like for the four of them to meet again now. Erika gave a thumbs up, insisting their group were best buds for life. Yuichi questioned the outdated slang she used. Erika declared confidently, "I am the trend. If I think it's cool, it's cool." Yuichi was blinded by her overwhelming confidence. Yuichi sighed, silently calling her Eri. Erika beamed, pleased that he was finally using her nickname. Yuichi said goodbye to Erika. She rushed off to her part-time job like a hurricane, leaving Yuichi standing there watching her go. On his way home, Yuichi thought, he could call Erika Eri so easily, but why did it feel so difficult with Sumi? He wondered if it was because his feelings for Sumi were more special. When he got home, his little sister Chihiro ran out to greet him with a face as bright as the sun. "Welcome home, big brother." Chihiro excitedly chattered about how she had just seen Sumi. Yuichi listened in surprise. And then, Chihiro dropped a bombshell. "We're going to have a sleepover at Sumi's house." She proudly announced that she had already asked Sumi, who had agreed. Yuichi froze. "Huh!" Yuichi's shout of "What?" echoed through the neighborhood. He couldn't believe his ears. A sleepover at Sumi's house? Was this really going to happen?